In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in Black and White emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Good evening, and welcome home. If you found your way to this program tonight, whether you tuned in from your living room, your car, your phone, or a screen somewhere in the background of your busy life, I want you to know this hour belongs to you. This is your time. This is our time. You're watching America in Black and White, the show that refuses to let the most extraordinary stories in this country go untold. Because we know the truth that the headlines so often miss, that the most powerful transformations happening in America right now are not in the boardrooms, not in breaking news tickers, and not on the floors of Congress. They are happening in church sanctuaries at 6 in the morning, in courtrooms where someone is finally getting the legal voice they were never supposed to have, and in classrooms where a man could have stopped years ago decided to go back and earn a doctorate instead. They're happening one relationship, one community, one act of servant leadership at a time. And that is why we are here. Season 4, episode 116, still going, still building, still telling the truth. Tonight is a special night because our guest is not a man who simply talks about service. He is service, embodied and walking. A son of Lake Charles, a husband for over 28 years, a father of 3 extraordinary young women, a pastor who has shepherded souls for nearly 3 decades, an entrepreneur who built something from nothing and then decided that was not enough, a graduate of Loyola University New Orleans College of Law, honored with the Spirit of Ignatius Award, the highest distinction that institution bestows upon a graduating doctor of law, a pro bono champion, a public servant, a man of deep, abiding, uncompromising faith. He is proof that excellence is not an accident. It is a choice made over and over again in quiet moments when no one is watching, in hard seasons when the road is long, and the triumphant ones when everything you planted finally blooms. America, we're about to have a conversation that will stir something in you, something that reminds you of what you were made for, something that calls you back to your community, your calling, and your courage. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to America in Black and White, Dr. Alex J. Bellow. Hello,
Good
sir.
Good evening, and thank you so much for having me this evening.
Oh, yes, sir. Is there anything you'd like to say to our audience before we get into the show?
Well, first of all, just again, thank you for having me, and thank them. I want to thank your audience for logging on and participating in this conversation as we talk about the issues that are relevant to us in this country in this moment in time.
Yes, sir. And so, how I always start every show out, I like to give the audience the opportunity to learn a little bit about our guests. So, I call this Your Life Story, Your Family Foundation, and Your Journey.
Yeah.
Dr. Bellow, you are the ninth of 11 children.
Correct.
Take us back to that house in Lake Charles. What was the energy like growing up in a home that full of life? And how did being raised in that kind of community within a family shape the man you are today?
Well, as you can imagine, it was a crowded house. We did not have a large house. We were not a family with, great wealth. This was a house with that many people in it, including my maternal grandmother as well, um, with in a 4-bedroom house, 2 bath. So there was a lot of doubling up and a lot of hand me downs, but it was also a house filled with love. Um, there is not one day that I have been alive, whether in that house or outside of that house, where we wondered where food was going to come from, where clothes was going to come from. We were taught to be hard workers, whether that was doing hard work with our hands, or like me, I do now, hard work with my brain. We were a family that was raised on faith. I was born and raised by a deeply devoted Catholic mother. My mom and dad made certain we received a Catholic education, kindergarten through 8th grade. We prayed together as a family. We were brought to church and then were instructed to go to church when we became adults. And so it was an amazing time.
Mm. So your late father, Mr. Aaron A. Bellow Sr.
Yeah.
Who was he to you? When you think of him today, what is the image, the memory, the lesson that comes to the forefront of your heart?
A man of dedication, first, because there's this narrative in this country that Black men don't stay around, and that we don't raise our children, and Papa was a Rolling Stone, but that was not my dad's testimony. My dad stayed and raised. I say 10 of us because the firstborn that makes 11, I am told he passed away basically at birth. So he stayed and raised his children. He along with my mother, he embodied a work ethic that was unquestioned. I recall Daddy would wake up at 3 in the morning to get to his day job, which was at a concrete plant. And he would come home roughly around 6 in the evening, because after he got off at the plant, he did carpentry work on the side. But he did not use that busy schedule to just be, absent. When he was home on the weekends or in the evenings, he made certain we had what we need. He told Mama to, bring them children shopping, go get what they need, and that kind of thing. And so that's what I remember about my dad, a hardworking man who stayed around. I never wondered what my daddy was.
I want to thank each and every person that's participating and watching the show tonight, all of our great people that watch all the time. I appreciate you, and I want to thank each and every individual for those that are asking and are saying, in the comments when you're speaking hello. I want to thank you for being here. Please enjoy the show, and if you got any questions, please make sure that you put your questions in the text. I'm saying in the chat. Here is someone is saying here in the chat here, they're saying greetings to you, Mr. Alex.
Greetings to you as well. Thank you.
So with you growing up as the ninth of those 11 children,
Yeah.
there are children before you and children after you.
Yeah.
How did your position in the family birth order teach you something about leadership, about responsibility, and about how to see people who are both ahead of you and behind you at the same time?
So I will say all of us, I believe, or at least people who exercise a degree of wisdom, we learn from all things. We learn from the mistakes that are made by others who have gone before us, and obviously we learn by their good examples. And I think, or at least I hope, that um, or I know that I learned from my older siblings, from the good examples that they set, such as my very oldest sister. She, obviously she was the first one. She went off to college. She, first earned her bachelor's degree in nursing and went on to become a nurse practitioner. But then my next oldest brother, or my oldest brother, right underneath her, he went into the workforce, and he did not need nor require higher education to accomplish his goals. I learned from that. I have the next three brothers under him went off to the military, so I learned from that. My sisters are all educated. All of my sisters went achieve higher education, and so those were some of the examples that I learned from, and I'm hoping that I impacted my siblings in a similar fashion.
What's so interesting is I love your family dynamic because I remember when I'm the oldest of three. And so I remember how lonely that was when I could look at my cousins when they like at that time it was like maybe I think it was 5 or 6 of them, and I'm like, well, man, I mean, I want a brother and a sister, and so as you're growing it through all of this, and you learn, the ups and downs, and the sibling rivalry and so forth. What has that put into you as you bestow unto your children and the community that you outreach to?
So one of the things that my wife and I are seeking to do with our children is to instill in them the how important it is to know your family, maintain strong connections with your family. I'm a man that I joke. I say I'm the king of owning my stuff, owning my crap. And one of the regrets that I have is, you know, we all moved across the country. We went in different directions, and I failed to maintain the contact with some of my siblings as I now, at getting older, look back and say, man, I wish I would have done that. Consequently, some my children don't know all of their cousins, because you can imagine how many nephews and nieces I have with with nine living siblings. So I'm right now, that's the intentional work my wife and I are doing, and encouraging our children to begin to make contact, whether it is, through this social media stuff and text chains and things of that nature, to know your cousins, connect with your family, because at the end of the day, family, I'm not going to say family is all we got. I think that's a misnomer, because I think you can have some non-blood people who are just quality friends. So I'm not going to say family is all we got, but family should be very high on the list.
So your mother, Mrs. Bellow,
Mhm.
what did she model for you in that household that you carry into your ministry and your law practice today?
Service and commitment to social justice. So, born in the 30s, my mom and dad born in the 30s. They were born and raised in southern Louisiana, southwestern and south central Louisiana. and think about that, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s in this country. Mom had a strong injustice didn't sit well with her. And so when I recall the stories of at that time, we lived on a gravel road, or they lived on a gravel road, I should say. And the other part of the city that was more affluent, they started getting their roads paved. So mom began to challenge, I guess, the city council or whatever the governing authority was at that time about why can't we get our roads paved? We pay taxes. We do the same things they do on that side of the city. So she was a social activist in her own way. But above all of that, mom was just dedicated to serving and taking care of our home and making certain that her children were always taken care of, from our physical needs, food, clothes, things of that nature, to our spiritual needs, making certain we got that Catholic grounding and education wise, making certain we got to mass. She was the one that led what we called rosary, where we would say the rosary at least one time a week as a family. And so she instilled in me a commitment to service and a passion for social justice.
Wow. So that's just, with that being innate in you, or that being self-taught or taught via your mother. Is there have there ever been some times as you work through your ministry, where this is part of lessons that you like to teach the flock, or do you ever get the opportunity to talk about this kind of togetherness and what this means to do service?
Oh, absolutely. My philosophy regarding effective preaching and teaching is via experience. So I like to lean into my lived experiences and bring that into my teaching, and my preaching. As a matter of fact, we talked about this, or I guess I talked about this in my sermon on yesterday about how, uh, our parents made certain that we went to church, and that there was no such thing as, you know, you too tired to go to church, but you got enough strength to go hang out at the party or at the movies or something like that. And so we talked about those types of things, and I attempt to bring in the lessons I've learned from my parents and my upbringing in my home into my ministry, preaching and teaching, because I believe um, that's where I am my most effective.
You built a successful business career before returning to school. Talk to us about that season. What was happening in your inner life that told you a successful career was not the whole story, and what finally moved you to go back?
So I'm gonna say, I guess there was always something within me that I had this innate ability to um, uh, identify possible or to come up with ideas that I thought could turn into a successful business. And so that was sort of part of, I guess, my DNA. But to be successful at anything, especially entrepreneurship, you have to have an unquestioned work ethic. An entrepreneur will not be successful. I don't believe you're going to be successful if you're just kind of lazy or laissez-faire. So my dad and my mom and dad instilling this hard work ethic within me and us, I believe led to my business success. Um, and so you're correct. I was fortunate to build businesses. I started in 2005 an insurance agency from what's called scratch, meaning I didn't buy an agency. I started one from nothing and grew that into a multi-million-dollar book of business. But somewhere around 2014, I became disenchanted with just making money, and I'm not against making money. at all. But making a lot of money, and for me, I didn't feel like I was really serving the community the way I wanted to be serving the community. I felt the Lord was leading me to sell that business, step away from it, immerse myself fully into the work of ministry, or as fully as possible, while I go back to school and better myself educationally. So for me, and I haven't taken a vow of poverty or anything. It, money is just not high on my list of things that are important to me. I want to live a good life. I want my children and my wife to live in a comfortable home. I want us to have reliable cars and things of that nature. And so I'm not trying to suggest that money is a problem for me. Money is just not high on the list. And so I made the decisions that I made.
So you graduated summa cum laude from the University of New Orleans and with honors from Delgado. When you walked across that stage as a non-traditional student, as a pastor, a husband, a father, and a businessman, what did that moment mean to you beyond the degree itself?
It meant everything, because no matter how successful I was on paper, I've got this business, I'm making all of this money, which kind of, you think about it, people go to school to get good jobs to make a lot of money. And so it it's like I did everything backwards, but it meant everything to me for two reasons. One, despite how successful I was on paper, making money and things of that nature, I always regretted never finishing school, because I when I graduated high school, I did try college. It didn't work. What I say about me is I was undisciplined, lazy, and unfocused, which is why I was not successful. But I always had this regret. So I had lived with this regret for decades. Um, and secondarily, I wanted to be able to set an example for my daughters, who will likely experience setbacks in life and get knocked down. But I wanted them to be able to look at dad and say, hey, listen, things didn't work out for daddy the way he thought they were going to work out, but he stuck it out. He went back, and look at him now.
I like that because I think a lot of times when we can set that example and our kids actually get to see these examples, it make them better citizens. And sometimes I know the roads are a little bit difficult for a lot of other people. And like for instance, like when you deal with your ministry itself in general, and when you do your outreach and engagements, when you're helping people and so forth, have you ever had conversations with any of your constituents, when it came to education, some things that was missing and they needed some of that motivation and inspiration that you got?
Yes, that the answer is yes. And my journey has been uh, inspirational to me for another reason. So my wife is highly educated. My wife has an earned doctorate degree, and she went straight out of high school, started college that summer. Went straight through, then went to work a little bit, went get a master's degree. And when our middle girl was a lap baby, so I guess one or so, she graduated with her doctorate degree. And so
Oh,
education was always on display in our congregation. However, when I went back, it's as I can't really identify and articulate what happened, but all of a sudden, people started saying to me, "Hey, Pastor, I'm going back to school." And my assistant, she graduated last week with her MBA, and so I got somebody graduated this year with a doctorate. I got another one writing writing a dissertation, and everything in between. And so it's as if people, I guess, maybe watched my journey and said, well, he doing it, so I can do it. And that has been extremely heartwarming to me.
Wow. That's rich. That's rich. How has growing up in Lake Charles, Louisiana, specifically, the culture, the community, the resilience of that city, imprinted itself on the way you lead, serve, and love?
So Lake Charles at the time when I was growing up was a very, very small city. Since I've left, you know, here in Louisiana, gambling became legalized, so it has big casinos and things of that nature. So it's grown a lot. But at that time, when I was being raised there, we were a very small city. We did not have, at least to my knowledge, you know, much violent crime. You know, that was poverty, certain. That's without a doubt. But the poverty, uh, to me, and maybe it's because of the way I was raised, the home I was raised in, it wasn't debilitating. And so, for example, I lived in a single family home, but literally at the end of the street that I lived on was the housing project. So you, at the end of my street, you cross over the street and then you're in a housing development. So I was adjacent to it. But we didn't have a sense of apathy. We didn't have a sense of, you know, we're gonna always be poor and we're never gonna have anything. And I think growing up in an environment like that, at least it didn't cripple me. Maybe if we would have had, if that mentality that I just um, shared would have been the prevailing mentality, who knows where I would be today. But that mentality was not the prevailing mentality. And I credit, I think being raised there impacted me in that way that I, I just believe if I want to go do something, I can probably do it.
Tell us about your wife. She over 28 years of marriage, through ministry, through business, through law school. How has she been your anchor? And what does the world not see about the sacrifice she has made to help you become who you are?
So her name is Dr. Shawan Bellow, and she is the reason why I exist. She was raised by a single mother. Uh, they didn't have a lot, but she understood the value of education, and so she went straight to college out of high school, being the first in her family among her siblings. Um, she inspired her baby sister, who is 4 years her junior, and they both actually graduated with their doctorate degrees together on the same day from the same school. And so she is the reason why I am the man that I am today. She instilled in me a sense of purpose and worth. When I first met her, I struggled with low self-esteem, and she spoke life into me. My wife believes that everybody can learn, and that everybody, she's an educator by training, and that everyone should be a lifelong learner. So when I would speak ill of myself because without having the proper knowledge and the proper foundation, I just thought I wasn't a smart person. I was like, you know, I'm dumb. I can't do this and I can't do that. And I keep dropping out of school and I can't get anything finished. And she eradicated that unhealthy thinking by speaking life into me. She never pushed me to go to school. But once I made the decision to go to school, there was not a bigger cheerleader on the planet. She, whatever needed to be put aside, whatever of my responsibilities in our home and family needed to be put aside because I had to focus on school, she picked up the slack with not a second of, you know, complaining about anything. She reminds me daily that who I am in Christ, and what my abilities are when I submit myself to spiritual authority and walk in obedience. And so I would say, of course, my mom and dad played a major role into shaping who I would become, but I don't think I would be where I am today had Shawan Bellow not come into my life.
I have a question for you here in the comments from Solomon. I'm going to put it on the screen for you.
Sure.
He says, as an attorney, a pastor, a father, and a husband, what are the things you should have done at your youthful age to better yourself and give back to the Black community better?
I think I used to think going to school the traditional route would have been better, but I've now changed my mind. I believe everybody has seasons to do what they need to be doing. So that's off the table. I wish I would have begun my philanthropic work earlier, in my career, when I, was experiencing a great deal of financial success. I always gave back. It's just in my DNA to give. I wish I would have given more. I wish I would have established scholarships for deserving young Black people who have demonstrated a desire and a work ethic to accomplish certain goals, but didn't have the financial means. So I think one of the things I could have done better is begun my philanthropic work earlier.
You are a father of 3 daughters, Jasmine, Alexandra, and Julianne Alexis. And
Jasani Miracle.
Yes, and Jasani Miracle. When they watch you show up in the community as a pastor, as an attorney, as a servant, what do you hope they are receiving, and what specific lessons do you most want them to carry into their own lives?
It's pretty simple. Be a good person. Be a good person and help as many people as you can. To this day, I don't believe all of these titles that I have. That if I'm a bad person, they're meaningless. And so I want my girls to be good people, to serve the community in their way. I've never asked my daughters to duplicate what I do, but serve. All of us are called to serve on some degree, on some level. Be a good person. The scripture's pretty clear. It says Jesus went around doing good. I don't think you need any kind of degree to dissect that. Just do good. Be a good person. That's what my hope is.
So let's change gears and let's talk a little bit about your faith and pastoral leadership.
Yeah.
You've been a senior pastor for over 28 years before we talk about what you've built. Let's talk about the beginning. What was the call like? How did God first make it clear to you that the pastoral ministry was your assignment? How did he make that clear?
I'll never forget it. I moved out of Lake Charles to, at that time, what I thought was New Orleans, the big city. Because when you're in a little city like Lake Charles, New Orleans is a big city. New Orleans is really not a big city, but to my 18-year-old mind, I moved to the big city, and I got involved in the big city party life, and I quickly walked away from the values that I was raised with. And I remember one day calling my mama after having, sort of in my mind hit rock bottom. I wasn't living the way I was raised to live. I just wasn't being a good person. I was actually being, in my mind, a very bad person. And I called my mama and I said, Mama, life, I don't even recognize myself. I don't know what to do. And Mama said one thing. She said, well, baby, go to church. And having been born and raised as Catholic, I didn't have a vehicle, so I went to the little Catholic church that was around my house or my apartment where I live. And I went to mass, and mass there at that particular um, church. It wasn't. I grew up in sort of a primarily black Catholic church, and we had the gospel choir and all that. So it was a great black experience. The church I went to here, it just was sort of monotone and dry. And so I came home from mass. I called Mama. I said, "Mama, you told me to go to church. I went to church, and it didn't do anything for me." And she said, "Well, baby, go to any church." And so I went to a full gospel Baptist church at that time. And again, I don't have a car, so I had to get somewhere where I could easily get to it. And it was life changing. It was charismatic. The preacher was outstanding. The music was amazing. I felt while I'm in this huge auditorium with literally like thousands of people. It felt like the preacher had been like in my house and knowing everything that I was going through, and had listened to these conversations I just had with my mama. And I was drawn in from that day. And I became a faithful member, and I couldn't get enough. If the church was open, I was there. I couldn't get enough of it. And then I would say about a year or maybe 2 years or so into being, a faithful parishioner, I felt the call to do more, to serve at a more in a more sacrificial manner, and I felt the call to public ministry, and that's how it all began.
So in 2002, you and Dr. Bellow founded Hosanna Fellowship Church of Gretna.
Correct.
Take us inside that decision. What were you stepping into? What were you stepping away from? And what did faith look like when the building was still just a vision?
In 1996, we got married. In 1998, while we were celebrating our 2-year anniversary, I received a call from a local congregation that had asked me to come and be their pastor. And so I accepted that assignment and I began senior pastoral ministry. However, I had taken over a ministry that was already established, and that had already had its culture established. Well, I was a young preacher. I was only about 25 years old. Therefore, I had a youthful following. And so a youthful following meant tattoos and gold teeth and sagging jeans and men with earrings. And that didn't set well with the congregation that I was called to pastor at that time. And so I found myself sort of having to fight a bunch of internal battles because the young people that was coming to this ministry were not really were not being made welcome there. And so my wife and I talked, and I knew my calling hadn't changed. I was called to preach and to pastor, but I concluded that I don't think I can carry out my vision in this setting. And so therefore we started Hosanna Fellowship Church of Gretna, or at that time it was Hosanna Fellowship Church. We added of Gretna a little bit later as a Bible study in our home with on what I call the Acts model. It was my wife and I, and we handpicked 10 adults to meet once a month in a home, because the book of Acts says the disciples, they went from house to house, fellowshipping together, breaking bread together, and learning the word of God. And so we did that for about 2 years or so before we launched a public ministry. And we did that intentionally so that I could cast vision and establish what I believed was the right culture for this church, which was a culture of being welcome, of being welcoming, and being open to all people, regardless of what they bring to the table.
Your mission is serve Christ by serving his people.
Correct.
Those are not just words on a wall. How do those words actually show up in your weekly schedule, in your budget decisions, in the way Hosanna Fellowship operates day to day?
Well, in my weekly schedule, my weekly schedule is jam packed with service. I have a JD. I can, if I wanted to, could be charging multiple thousands of dollars for the work that I do, but I choose to serve people who are unable to pay for legal services. So I serve people, who cannot afford legal representation, and I work as a staff attorney where I work, and that's the only people we serve. My budget decisions are made. We have an annual budget conference at our church. We begin it at the beginning of the last quarter of the year. So it is that October, and we try to finalize and ratify our budget by November. And that budget includes a hefty amount of money for outreach. And so these are not words on a paper. This is not a slogan. We serve Christ by serving his people. It's not a slogan. It is lived out by my wife and I, and by the people who serve along with us.
So you gotta tell us this, because I love what you're creating and what you have established at your church. Tell us, why is their outreach and the community engagement, why is that so important to you?
August 29, 2005, Hurricane Katrina hit the city of New Orleans, and it was devastating. Remember, I started my scratch insurance agency in 2005, July 1st, 2005, 59 days before the worst natural disaster hit this city. This worst natural disaster we had ever seen anywhere in this country hit this city. This congregation that I had established, we had just gotten our first public building in November of 2004. So we were a brand new congregation. So then we get hit with this life-changing storm that I don't think anybody, especially a young congregation like ours and a brand new business like mine, there was no way in my mind that I thought we could survive that. But then I received a phone call from this organization called World Vision International. I had never heard of them before. These people called me and said, Pastor Bellow, we're World Vision, and this is what we do. We respond to disasters all over the world. We want to partner with you to respond to this disaster. And the beginning of our support is, so far, we have raised $3.2 million. And we want you to oversee the awarding of $1.6 million, because remember, Katrina impacted Louisiana and Mississippi. So 1.6 was for Mississippi, 1.6 was for Louisiana. They said, we want you to oversee the awarding of this $1.6 million to churches. And I'm blown away because, one, I've never heard of this organization. Number two, I am nobody. I'm this little kid in his 20s, or however old I was at that time, with a congregation of under 100 people in a little rented building. Why would you want me to oversee $1.6 million. I've never overseen 1.6 any kind of dollars, let alone $1.6 million. And to be honest with you, today, 21 years later, I still don't know the answer to the why they chose me. But it turned out not to be a scam. It turned out not to be a farce. And it turned out to be the reason why Hosanna Fellowship Church is here today. That organization partnered with us and they said, here's what we want you to do. We want to send you stuff and we want you to get it out to the community. No questions asked. We're not tying this to, do you know Jesus and do you love Jesus? And you can only get this stuff if you confess Jesus. They said, be nice and get this stuff to people.
Right.
And with the money, they said, we want you to oversee grants to churches.
Man.
Maximum grant is $50,000 per church. And they said, Pastor, that $50,000 requires a grant of $10,000 to the pastor to go on vacation because y'all got 20 years. No, I think they said 10 years of recovery in front of y'all. And y'all got to get some rest.
Wow.
I was like, 10 years. Our familiarity with storms was, hey, this is sort of like an unexpected vacation. We're going to just go away for a few days, stay in a hotel, eat some food, enjoy whatever is in that city where we evacuate to, and then we come back to life as normal. So 10 years was never a thing for us. But they ended up being right. It took multiple years to recover. And to this day, that outreach we do is because of World Vision. This church receives a truck, an 18-wheeler, every other month on a Saturday, filled with whatever they want to send that particular month. And it's stuff as simple as, air fryers and personal hygiene items to brand new living room, dining room, bedroom sets.
Oh, and wow.
The assignment is still the same. Get it out to the people. Be nice. And that's that. So,
Dr. Bellow, I'll tell you, it sounds like you got the light. You got the light. I mean, that is totally awesome because, I think a lot of times, especially during that time, Katrina, because I just remembered that devastation as I watched that on TV. That was just horrific. And I'm just thinking, like, how in the world, especially with some of the things that was going on, how in the world can you just expect? Well, some people was just being inhumane, but apparently you had the light, and there was a reasoning behind that. And so, just as I think about, as you mentioned, what you say, what the outreach means and why it's so important to you, I think, they always say when you're giving, you always get as much back as you give. But it's the point about giving. And so some people don't understand what it means to give. So, when you say that you was always taught to serve, is that one of those things that you learned as well about giving?
Absolutely. There are a lot of myths about people like us, preachers and stuff, that we sit up and people wash our feet and they just do everything for us. That's not the case at this church. I'm out here on Saturdays when that 18-wheeler show up, and I'm helping to unload that truck. And my wife and I and our daughters, depending upon their schedule, because they're young adults and in school and stuff, but they're with us. And so it is a part of it's just a part of our way of life. I did take a break during law school. I didn't come out on those Saturdays, but my wife was always here. And it's who we are as a family. And so serving shows up in whichever ways you are blessed to serve. In our way, we get these big old 18 wheelers every other month. So my service is in, I get out here, I participate in unloading the truck, I participate in the outreach. Uh, uh, Depending upon when my outreach coordinator, schedules it, if I don't have some other conflict going on. And so it's a part of our DNA. It's a part of our culture, and it is a part of the ethic of our family, and that has permeated our church.
When people in Gretna and Jefferson Parish think of Hosanna Fellowship Church, what do they come to you for beyond Sunday morning? And what are the specific, tangible ways your congregation has reached into the community this year?
So when they think about, our outreach work with World Vision first started off as just disaster response. So whenever there's a disaster, we became known as, if anybody gonna know how to get supplies, at least call Hosanna. They might not have them, but they'll be able to tell you where to go, possibly. So we became known as the disaster outreach church. Now our outreach is not just for disasters. It is, again, it's every other month we get these trucks, and we are meeting needs dependent upon what's on the truck. So if there's some feminine, hygiene products, then part of our outreach includes the women's, domestic violence shelter. And then we provide them with stuff. If there's some baby stuff, then we sending it to organizations that's dealing with, maybe mothers who don't have everything that they need to provide for their children. We do a lot with nursing facilities. One of the number one requested items in nursing facilities, I'm sure this holds true around the country, is socks. And so one of our partnerships with World Vision has a partnership with Bombas. So they send us cases of socks. And so we serve, the nursing facilities. I'm a part of a fraternity that is big on community service. So each year, our church provides 1,911 pairs of socks for the year 1911, which is the year my fraternity was founded. And then we get that out into the community. And so it just depends on what we have at the time. That shapes what our outreach looks like.
Give us a story, a real specific story of someone whose life was changed because Hosanna Fellowship was there. You don't have to use their name, but help us feel the weight of what community-centered ministry actually produces.
Wow. This is 2026. So in November, that's going to be 24 years of doing this work through Hosanna. And we have been fortunate to hear a lot of stories of how our church has really helped people. But I think if I had to pick one, I would pick a story about a mother who, I think it was a fire. I know it was some sort of disaster. For some reason, I'm thinking it's a fire. It's a fire that happened in the home. Thankfully, nobody was physically harmed, but they lost everything. And Hosanna was there not only with whatever supplies we had through World Vision, but But then we made the call to the congregation and said, hey, listen, this family has lost everything, and these are the sizes. Boys this size, girls this size, women this size, and what you might have in your closet that is not worn out, that's just very in still good shape. Let's get it here, and let's help. Let's help these people. And I can recall the mother coming, to church and being, unable to speak and overcome with probably some grief, because how do you lose everything, and how do you respond to that? But then also some I guess some joy it mixed in, with the grief, and I think a degree of peace, knowing that the road ahead is going to be very, very difficult. But there's a community of people who don't know me, and that I don't know, that I wasn't a part of this church before this thing happened. I was just calling churches to see who could help. And to hear that mother, talk about how this church stepped up to help pull her family out of, I guess, would have been a horrible time when you lose everything and you don't have no insurance company to call and say, hey, come write me a big check so I can buy stuff back. Those kind of things are heartwarming to me.
Let's move over to talk a little bit about law, social justice, and your pro bono work. You were already a successful entrepreneur and a 28-year pastor when you decided to go to law school. Walk us into that decision room. What was the moment, the realization, the conviction, and the conviction that told you that law was the next frontier you had to conquer?
2020, COVID-19 had invaded this country and shut everything down. Consequently, everybody was home. Everybody was in their homes. And because I had been living a busy life, before then, I couldn't tell you the last time I had watched TV. I was busy, and so I didn't have time to watch TV. So I was, and I regret to say this because a pastor should never be this disconnected. I was oblivious to what was going on in this country as it relates to the social unrest. But now that I'm home, and like everybody else, I'm watching TV. I'm doing nothing but watching TV, eating, and gaining a bunch of weight. And so, I'm watching the TV, and I'm seeing the reporting about George Floyd. And then I saw Derek Chauvin kneeling on that man's neck with his hands in his pocket.
Yep.
As though this is a normal way of doing things. I'm just taking my regular Sunday stroll, is his body language to me. And I hear that man calling for his dead mama. And I cannot believe that I'm like, this is happening. And I had to tell myself that I had to, I don't know if I actually pinched myself, or I just kind of had to make certain this was real, that I wasn't dreaming. And then I read about Ahmaud Arbery. And then I read about this one. And then I read about that one. And then I read about this. And I'm blown away. And I cannot believe this is happening. And then I became violently angry. I didn't act out violently, but I was angry to the point that I could not convince myself that if somebody crossed me the wrong way at the wrong moment, that I would not respond violently. That's how angry I was. So now I'm thinking, what do I do here? I'm vehemently angry. I'm vehement. But I also know what the scripture says. The scripture says to be angry and to sin not. I'm also a student of Dr. King, and I know that Dr. King says, "Hey, look, we gonna attack this beast through nonviolence." And so I'm saying, okay, wait, I know I'm angry at the wrong moment. I think I might become violent, and so how do I reconcile all of this? And my wife and I were praying people, so we started talking and we started praying. And I thought, should I go to law school to address this in some kind of uh, sensible way? So we started thinking and praying about it and discerning, and then we watched Just Mercy, which is the story of Brian Stevenson. The movie is adapted from the book Just Mercy. Brian Stevenson was a young Harvard-trained lawyer who graduated from Harvard and moved straight down to, I believe, Selma. I know it's Alabama. I don't know I think it's Selma or Mobile, wherever. And he's equal justice initiative. And so I'm watching his work. And I remember the scene where he lost, and so the young man was executed. And I remember the weight Brian and his associates carried, from that experience. And we were watching that movie in our bedroom, and maybe pride and ego or whatever, I leaned over to the wall so that my naively thinking my wife wouldn't hear and see, and I began to cry. And she rolled over and she kissed me on my cheek and she said, "You got to go to law school." And that was the final decision. That night, the decision was made to go to law school. I studied for the LSAT over that summer of 2020 while taking 12 credit hours in the summer and being a full-time pastor. I applied at that time in 2020. The admission cycles opened on September 1st for the following law school year. I submitted all of my applications to all 4 law schools in Louisiana, and I got my acceptance to 2 of them, Loyola and LSU, on our wedding anniversary, January 13th, 2021. And then I got my 3rd acceptance to Southern, I forget what date. And then I got waitlisted at Tulane. And then I eventually got accepted into Tulane. But once Loyola accepted me and offered what I thought, was a significant scholarship, my decision was made to go to Loyola.
Your degree from Loyola University New Orleans College of Law came with a certificate of social justice. What does social justice mean to you, not as an academic concept, but as a lived, daily, community-embedded practice?
Simple. Being a voice for the people who want you to be a voice for them. I no longer say a voice for the voiceless, because no one is voiceless. Everybody has a voice if they want to exercise it. What I do is I'm a voice for the people who say, "I want you to speak for me." They still have a voice. They've chosen or given me the honor and the privilege to speak for them. And that's what social justice is. Social justice is what Micah 6:8 says. Do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with God. And that is what social justice is. And it can manifest in all kind of ways. It manifests with me in my practice as a youth defender, but I have colleagues who do domestic violence. They represent victims of domestic violence. I have another colleague who represent people in asylum court, in immigration. We do, there is environmental justice. So social justice is being a voice for the people who allow you the honor and the privilege of being a voice for them. And it can manifest in all kind of ways.
So, as you were speaking, about how things took place when you initially got into law school, and now that you've come full circle, now that you've gotten your degree here in law, what are some of the things that you would love for people out in the audience that are watching, especially in your area? What are some of the things that you want them to know, not just how you do law in practice, but what law is meant to be and why it's important that they try to stay close to people that's got their best interests at heart?
So law is either a tool or a weapon determined, and that is predicated upon who's using it and for what reason. And so what I believe all people should know is that the law can be used to help you and benefit you and allow you to progress in life, or it can be used against you. As the uh, George Bush #2, he was famous for this whole weapons of mass destruction thing. Um, uh, the law in the wrong hands is a weapon of mass destruction. And so everybody should have a basic understanding of their fundamental rights as citizens of these United States of America, so that um, nobody will be able to use the law unjustly against you as a weapon of mass destruction, because they're getting over on you because you just don't know your rights.
Yeah, remember he also took away habeas corpus.
Correct. under the guise of national security.
You received the Louisiana State Bar Association's Pro Bono Award in 2024. Before we celebrate that honor, tell us who you were serving, what kinds of people, and what kinds of situations walk through the door and need a lawyer but cannot afford one.
So my service was multifaceted at that time. In 2024, in academic year 2023 to 2024, so August 2023 to May 2024, I was a student in our clinic. And so some of my pro bono work was being a student attorney for a couple of guys. Additionally, one of my mentors, he holds a annual expungement clinic. So I volunteer at his expungement clinics every year. In 2024, no, so last year was my first year doing what we call lawyers in libraries, where lawyers go post up at libraries and provide free legal advice for a few hours. But so that wasn't in 2024. And so primarily my pro bono work would have been my work in the clinic as a student practitioner, my volunteer work for expungement clinics, and there were other volunteer things. So whenever we have disasters and stuff, certain laws get enacted, and so I would volunteer to provide assistance with disaster, some consultation on what's available to you what does the law make available to you, considering that this area have been declared deemed a disaster area. So that type of work that I do.
So, without telling us any names or so forth, can you tell us about a pro bono case, one that has stuck with you for the longest?
Yeah. Ironically, I just wrapped up with this particular client today. I began representing this client last year. They were a young person, so a minor, but were charged with very significant offenses that allowed them to be charged as an adult. And we took them to trial, and we secured, I think, a pretty notable victory based upon the case and everything that was admitted, into the trial. But the state was unable to meet its burden of proving my client did what they said my client did, and so they were convicted of what's called the lesser included. So not as charged, but a lesser, less significant crime. So which was a victory, and then we had the sentencing about 2 months later, just under 2 months. And my client was sentenced to, actually, at the sentencing, they were given an illegal sentence. They were given a sentence of more than what the law allows. And so the judge exceeded the maximum for a kid who had been convicted for the first time. And so that kid has lived within my mind and my heart since then. And despite serving a sentence of nearly a half a century, which is what he was sentenced to, the state is still prosecuting a bunch of little small, minor, youthful infractions that they allege he had done in the past. And so I had trial. Today. And he couldn't care less about these cases, because there's nothing the court can do to him worse than what's already been done. And I told him, you are a human being to me, and you are important to me. And so I'm going to prepare like this is your very first case ever. And like it's the death penalty on the line. Obviously, it's not the case, but that's how I'm going to prepare. And it paid off. Today, we had trial. They were charged with 3 violent felonies. I got not guilty on 2, and a conviction of the lesser included of 1, which made it a misdemeanor instead of a violent felony. And so I put in hours of work, hours of preparation, when it kind of don't make, why? I mean, the worst that could happen to this kid has already been done. So
yeah,
I could literally go to court and put my feet on the table and say nothing. And he won't be worse off because they can do no more to him.
Right.
But that's not how I'm built. If I'm going to take on a responsibility, I'm going to take my responsibility seriously. And I am going to put on a zealous defense. And it paid off.
Wow. So, tell us this, because, as I listen to you, I listen to passion in your voice. I listen to the concern in your voice. How do you keep it from getting personal?
Well, I have not been successful in that. And that is one of the growth. You know, you're familiar with SWOT analysis, strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. Those are that's one of my opportunity areas. And so I have to improve. Otherwise I won't last. This year makes 2 years. If I don't improve in this, I won't make 10 years. I'm gonna wash up. And so I have been working and I have been growing in that area. Um, I have had to accept some hard truths. And one of those hard truths is I did nothing to get my client in the mess that they're in. And so
Right.
I can't take responsibility
Right.
for what happened before the first minute I ever met you. Um, and then I have to accept the reality that things won't always go the way I want them to go. In the year after my second year of law school, I interned at the public defender's office, and I recall on my first week there, I assisted the attorneys in a trial of a, a young man who was charged with a crime that had a mandatory minimum 5-year sentence. Mandatory minimum 5-year sentence. Um, and um, they offered him a plea deal. He rejected it. But if he had accepted that deal, by the time I had ever met him, he would have already completed his sentence.
Exactly.
And the lawyers lost, got a guilty. And because I was somewhat familiar with the judge, I knew that it was going to be far worse than the 5 years. 5 years was the minimum. I knew at the end of a trial, if a guilty came, it was going to be far worse, and I was right. He ended up getting 20 years.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you like this. I don't know what part of law do you practice in particular? Are you just defense, or do
Yeah,
you
my
have a
my
specialty?
primary practice is youth defense. So my primary practice is youth defense. I started off in adult criminal defense, but I quickly got in touch with the reality of myself and my capacity, and I accepted that at this moment in time, I don't have the emotional capacity to walk a teenager into a 50-year sentence. I don't have that capacity. And so I pivoted out of that because I don't have the capacity to handle that. Maybe one day I will, but right now I don't. And so I moved into youth defense. And to finish that story about how I manage now, the deputy chief of the office where I was interning told me I had to create a new definition of winning, because if winning to me was only not guilty, I got to find something else to do, because that's not going to be my reality. And so I now have a new definition of winning, and that's helping me to accept this stuff better.
Well, I tell you, if I ever needed an attorney, I would want one that's got your heart and that fight that you got, because a lot of us don't get that in court. And as I look at that, I'm like, oh my God. It's kind of hard to think about that. And I understand, how that has to go. But, I would, if I ever need an attorney, I would want them to have that same fight that you got, because that means a whole lot. That means you got somebody that's going to get there in the trenches with you and help you out. What changes in someone's life when they finally have legal representation? Can you quantify or describe the shift you've witnessed emotionally, practically, and economically when a person who felt powerless in the system suddenly has an advocate?
Yeah. I remember a kid walking up to me he had decided to accept an offer. And I wasn't his attorney. His attorney was out on bereavement. His attorney's parent, I think it was the father, passed away, so he was out. He was ready to come in and begin his sentence, which was going to be a minimum, because some charges have mandatory minimums. So it was a minimum 5-year sentence. He walked up to me. He said, "I'm ready to go." It's like, "Who are you? What are you talking about?" He was like, "Yep, my lawyer such and such. We got this deal. I talked to my family last night. I kissed my babies. I told them goodbye. I'm ready to go." And I started talking to him. I was like, "Hey man, look, that's not what I do. I don't just walk people into prison. I got to understand what's going on here." So the court recessed for lunch. I said, "Okay, look, we're gonna go to lunch. You got to talk to me." Through the course of lunch, he started recognizing me because, one, I'm a pastor. Um, he said, "You such and such uncle." So he named one of my nephews. It's like, "Yeah, yeah, we grew up together. You're my friend. And your wife is such and such. She was my first grade teacher. And you pastor this church." Like, "Yeah, man." And so we talking, and so I accepted that he was ready to go. So I said, "Okay, well, look, what do we? Okay, you're gonna do these years. What's gonna be different? How are you gonna not go back ever again?" He said, "Well, I already got a job lined up in Colorado. I got a truck driving job. I'm gonna go do this bid. That's what they call it. I'm gonna go do this bid, get this over with, and I'm not coming back to New Orleans." It's like, "All right, cool." So one Saturday morning, I'm in my driveway doing something, and the garbage truck comes to pick up my garbage. The person gets off the back of the truck, the one who they call them the hoppers, I believe. They get the garbage can, and he's standing there and he's saying, "No, no, no." I was like, "What's up, man? What's going on?" Then he pulled, you wear a mask when, I guess all that debris he pulled his mask down, and it was him.
Oh my God.
And I said, "No." And he came up to me and I hugged him and I said, "Man, it is so good to see you. What's going on?" And he was like, "Man, I'm out." I don't know if people know this, but working on a garbage truck is a well-paying job. It's like it's a significant job pay-wise. It's not glamorous, obviously, but he's got a good job making, I think, significant money. He's able to take care of his family. And if he continues in this path, he probably don't have to go back to the streets. And I think a lawyer who would have done nothing but taken his paperwork and walked him in the court and say, "Judge, go ahead and send him to prison to 5 years," I don't think I would have got that response. I think so. What I sensed from him is he was grateful to see me, and he was grateful for the 2-3 hours I spent with him that day to talk about life and what will life look like post prison, and how do we not go back to prison, and how do we make some better choices. And that was a great day.
Wow. What are the specific legal barriers that Black communities in Louisiana and across the South face most acutely? And how are those barriers both symptoms and causes of deeper systemic inequities?
Lack of representation, lack of diverse representation. And the reason why there is a lack of diverse representation is because law schools and the bars of each state has created hurdles from people for people who are from underrepresented communities. It's hard to get into law school. It's hard to be able to afford law school, and it is hard to afford the bar. It's hard to study for the bar, and it's hard to take the bar. So the bar is what it is: a bar, a hurdle, a way to keep people out. And the high cost of a legal education is also a barrier or a bar. And when there is a dearth of diverse people in the profession with the call or the passion or the drive to do this work that I do, it creates a domino effect down the line.
When you said domino effect, can you give us an example of what?
Yeah, so because there's a lack of people who can afford to go to law school to go get a job that is not a lot of money. We don't make a lot of money in what we do. So you spend a lot of money to go to law school to go get a job that is inherently low paying. And so that prevents people from going into this work. And so therefore, there is a lack of people who have the representation, because there's not enough people who wants to go into this work, and there's not enough people who wants to go into this work because it costs a whole bunch of money to go to law school to get into this work.
So you sit at the intersection of faith and law every day. How does your theology inform your legal advocacy, and are there moments when those two words create tension with each other?
Let me start the first question. So the advocacy, or the intersection of faith and the law. Here is what it has done to me, in me. It has caused me to become more merciful, because what I understand is, I have this book that sits on my shelf in my other office, and it says, we are all criminals. Some people have a criminal record, but everybody has a criminal history, because everybody has broken some kind of law somewhere, and they just didn't get caught. And this book highlights a person, the stories, anonymous people who tell their stories. And it is people like an engineer who said they needed a laptop for school. So they went and bought a laptop, a MacBook, took the MacBook out, put their old broken computer back into the box, sealed it back up, and returned it, and got their money back. Isn't that
Oh my God. Well, I'm telling you why I'm laughing, is because I hear people doing that kind of stuff all the time. I don't know what makes somebody do that, but they do that.
Well, their story is, I needed a laptop. I didn't have no money to get a laptop, so I needed to do what I needed to do. They're an engineer today. Are they an engineer that committed theft? 100%. They've never been prosecuted for it. So they have a criminal history, but not a criminal record.
Right.
The people I represent are people like me and you. They got caught. In my younger days, I think at a minimum, I was a functioning alcoholic. I drove drunk 100 times, I assume. I never got caught. I got a call this weekend for somebody who is facing 10 to 30 years in prison because they done got caught multiple times driving while intoxicated. And so I'm now more merciful. I now understand, but for the grace of God, there go I. You're not I'm not better than you because I don't have a criminal record. You are a human being that made a bad decision or some bad decisions on certain occasions, and now you have to pay a price for it. But you're just, at the end of the day, a human being.
Well, I want to make sure that I'm being, careful with your time, and not to go so far over. But I want to ask you this one last question, and I also hope that we can have you back to finish a part two. Because this is a really great conversation. But I want to ask you this last question. Have you read the book, The Color of Law? And if so, what did you think about it?
I have not read the entire book. That book was assigned to me in one of my, I think, sociology classes that was dealing with gentrification. So I have not read the entire book, but I read a subsection of the book. And I think, so it opened up my eyes to how pervasive gentrification is, because our city, New Orleans, it's just a gentrified city post Katrina. And it talked about wherever you see bike lanes in Black neighborhoods, it's gentrified. And
Come on,
it's
Atlanta.
gentrified because, and so therefore, once gentrification happens, poor people are getting priced out.
Exactly.
They're not going to be able to continue living there, because even if they own the house, they're not going to be able to afford the taxes because the property value has shot up, or they're not going to be able to afford the insurance because the property value has shot up. And so that opened my eyes to how pervasive gentrification can be, and it has informed how I think I want to approach when my wife and I begin to purchase, because we want to purchase some properties and do some things for our, to generate an additional stream of income. And I want to be very thoughtful and deliberate on how I go about that process, so that I am not contributing to the gentrification of a neighborhood and pricing out the people who made that neighborhood what it is.
I think that should be a required reading for all people that are Black and brown, because that book tells you everything you want to see in black and white, in color, is why it's called The Color of Law.
Correct.
And it's got to be mandatory, and it's one of those things that I think if people really read that and understood exactly what it's talking about, I think then they could get they could feel a little bit better in trying to get a grasp and an understanding as to laws and why they are where they are and what they do. Because it's the functionality of laws that people don't get a grasp of. You may read this and understand this, but you don't know how this works,
Correct.
But that book does help. So in closing, what are some words of wisdom and encouragement you'd like to leave for our audience? Tell them how to connect with you via social media. Tell them about your website, about your law firm, all of those good things.
So first of all, words of wisdom that I would leave is believe in yourself. I live by that philosophy that there is no such thing as a useless human being. If you are alive, you have a purpose for being here, and so figure that purpose out and go get it. Build into your life resilience, because the danger of telling a person's story is generally the highlights are told, the degrees and the awards and the accolades, and we generally don't tell the lows and the nights crying and the times wondering, did I do something stupid to end up, and how can I do this? So build a spirit of resilience within yourself. To connect with me, My law firm, website is alexbellowlaw.com. Our church's website is H as in Harold, F like Frank, C like Cat, Gretna.org, hfcgretna.org. I am most active on LinkedIn. I'm not very active. I have Facebook and Instagram, and that's just Alex J. Bellow or Alex Bellow, one of the two. Is no weird names. And that's how you connect with me. Thank you for having me here today, Brother King, and thank your audience for listening into this conversation.
I'm going to close here with a monologue, but after I close the show, I'd like to speak to you a couple of minutes afterwards if you do
Absolutely.
have that.
I'll be right here.
For those of you that have spent this time with us, I hope you've enjoyed the show. I hope you guys have learned quite a bit of lessons of when we talk about community building, what that's really like. For those of you that are watching, especially on our YouTube channels, if you have not yet subscribed and enabled all notifications, I ask if you will please support us by subscribing and connecting to all those channels, enabling all notifications. So as we go live, you'll get the notification, you get the show live, but you're also able to go back and watch all of our previous recorded shows and learn the lessons about what it takes to be a part of your community and to help your community as best as possible. So in closing, what a conversation, what a witness. If you've been sitting with us for this hour, you know that what just happened was not simply an interview, it was a testimony. It was a mirror held up to the very best of what we're capable of when we commit fully, faithfully, without excuse to the people around us. Dr. Alex Bellow came to this table tonight as a pastor, a lawyer, an entrepreneur, a husband, a father, a son, and in every role, in every title, what I heard underneath it all was the same word, servant. That is not a small word. In a world that chases visibility, Dr. Bellow has spent decades choosing responsibility. In a culture that rewards self-promotion, he has chosen to promote his community. And I want to say something to you. Yes, you out here that's watching right now. Dr. Bellow's story is extraordinary, but it is not beyond you. It began in an ordinary home in Lake Charles, Louisiana. It was built through discipline and faith, through late nights and early mornings, through showing up when it was inconvenient and staying when it was uncomfortable. His life is proof that excellence does not require permission. It requires presence. It requires you to show up for your neighborhood, for your family, for the person down the street who needs you and doesn't know your name yet. This is American Black and White. Mission to tell these stories until the telling itself becomes a movement. To celebrate what our communities have always known, that Black excellence is not a trend, it is a tradition. And we are adding to it, episode by episode, conversation by conversation. Please share this episode, pass it to someone who needs to be reminded of who they are, follow us, connect with our guests, and most of all, go out and do something in your community this week. Not because you have a platform, because you have a heartbeat. To Dr. Shawan Bellow, to Jasmine, to Julianne, to Jasani, thank you for sharing him with us. And to Dr. Alex Bellow, thank you for the reminder that in America, the truest stories are rarely the loudest ones. They are the ones written in service, in sacrifice, in love, in every shade of black and white. Good night, America. See you tomorrow, where we will have a new guest. That would be Dr. What's his name? Dr. Shaquille Spearman will be here tomorrow night for another